be focusing on the two Los Angeles teams, particularly the Los Angeles Clippers and their win over the Los Angeles Lakers. And I will also take the time to acknowledge the comments. Crucial PG in the chat said Glenn Rivers hops his way in the league again. So I believe he is surprised about Doc Rivers taking the head coaching position, finally making his way into the league again. Question, do you think he is going to blow a lead? Let's find out. But that is a question for you, Crucial PG. Now, Fern PG, he's also in this chat. A lot of PGs in this chat. Take off the turtleneck. No, I can't take off the turtleneck. That is not what's going to happen. But anyways, the Clippers are, they recently came up with a win going against the Los Angeles Lakers. The score was 127 to 116. Good overall team win. So far, they've been stomping out all the opponents that they've been going against. With Harden being traded and Westbrook deciding to move over to the bench, it only made sense that they'd end up working things out towards the end. And the Lakers fell short behind Anthony Davis's 26 and 12 and D'Angelo Russell's 27 and 10. So far, it's looking like trading D'Lo isn't going to be the best move because of how well D'Lo has been playing recently in these last few games. Now, this could all change come playoff time, like how it usually does for LeBron and company, but I'm not sure if now, he's making a very legitimate statement and a very legitimate case to not trade him. So I feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place for trading D'Angelo Russell. Fern PG in the chat mentioned how Kawhi Leonard got his second career triple-double. Yes, I'm going to talk about that a little bit now. You know what? I might as well talk about now. So, yeah, Kawhi recently, in the last game that he won, he got his second career triple-double, and it's very surprising that that's only the second time that that's happened in his career. However, personally, I don't really see Kawhi Leonard going after assists. He mainly goes for, points and, rebounds. And when he was on the Spurs, he was obviously getting a lot more defensive stops than he was scoring on offense. So that was a much bigger priority to him than that. So because he doesn't have, that playmaking aspect of his game, but he is a playmaker, he just doesn't necessarily, do it as well as the rest of the small forwards at his position, but he has playmaking in his arsenal. However, since he doesn't get those assists, he can never really get a triple-double. So, but yes, that is his second career triple-double, and it was obviously a very impressive night for him and the Clippers, and a very good shooting night from him, going 11 from 16 from the field, even though he didn't hit a three-pointer. Russell Westbrook, also a key player to the offense, coming off the bench, making sure that the bench doesn't lose its firepower on the offensive side of the ball. He's been very productive, and these Clippers have been making a case for being one of the favorites to make it out of the West. Fern PG in the chat mentioned, or he has a question, who do I have all time, Giannis or Jokic? I think right now, Giannis is better than Jokic all time simply because of the Defensive Player of the Year awards. Jokic has the better offense, but Giannis also is able to match in awards while also peaking him in awards. So I think Giannis might deserve having the higher all-time spot than Jokic does. Now, back on to what I was talking about with the Clippers. Russell Westbrook has been very productive on the Clippers and making a case for being one of the best teams to make it out of the Western Conference. And I believe that with Kawhi Leonard playing like this and the rest of the team being this productive on offense, James Harden having 23 points, Paul George having 17 on 8 of 12, Terrence Mann also having 17, along with Norman Powell also being able to score 17 points. This is a great all-around team. I believe that they could make a bunch of noise in the postseason. As for the Lakers, they really need to make this adjustment. They really need to get a good trade going. They really need to fix a lot of the pieces on this team, because they can't constantly be losing to these high-powered, high-seeded teams and expect to compete in the playoffs. That just can't happen. So I feel like they need to hurry up and get a trade going if they want to have a chance of making any type of further noise in the postseason. In further news, the Blazers lost once again to the Thunder. This time it wasn't in a blowout. They lost 109 to 111. I will go further into this game a little bit later. But for now, Shai dropped 33 points, which is almost a given for him on most of these nights. And he was also able to notch 10 assists. Shai has proven himself as a top 2 point guard in this league. The Warriors are done this season, in my opinion. So because they're done, I don't think Curry deserves to be top 2 in point guards. So for me, top 2 is between Luka and Shai. So I believe that right now, those two are the best point guards in the league. And this game is definitely an extension and more proof that Shai is one of those good point guards. Denver also beat the Indiana Pacers recently in a close game, 114 to 109. Nikola had another triple-double, getting 31 points with 10 assists, 13 rebounds, along with Jamal Murray also notching 31 points. So they both matched in points, and they were both able to pull away with the win over the Pacers. The Pacers did not have Tyrese Halliburton, however, and they still made it a close game. The final score was 114 to 109. So with that in mind, the fact that they didn't have their star point guard to provide offensively is very impressive. And if they had Tyrese, they most likely would have won this game, given with how close the scoring actually was. It wouldn't surprise me either if the Pacers pulled off this upset, because they've done it multiple times against several other teams. And Fern PG mentioned before in the chat, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Pacers beat the Bucks several times, even with Giannis scoring 64 points. And as mentioned earlier, the Nets lost 108 to 103 to the New York Knicks. Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson each scored 30 points. Mikal Bridges had 36, but it wasn't enough to go up against the Knicks. Mikal Bridges also received boos from his home crowd. He was later seen in the press conference making quotes saying, "It doesn't feel nice." It felt like playing at an away game, even though the Nets were essentially a home team. However, that might have been because of the locations of where the stadiums are and the fans that tend to go to these games, more so than it does the actual Nets fans booing you. So that doesn't necessarily sound like it makes sense, but let me make it so that it makes sense. So the Nets play in New York, same with the Knicks. And in the area that they play, there's still a wide variety of Knicks fans. So just because you live in Brooklyn doesn't necessarily mean you are a Brooklyn Nets fan. Most of the time, a lot of the people that are from Brooklyn have lived long enough to see the Knicks be the only team in New York, because the Nets used to be the New Jersey Nets. So before there was even another team in New York, there was only the New York Knicks. So a lot of people hold a lot more loyalty to the Knicks. So all of that booing might have actually come from Knicks fans rather than it was coming from Nets fans. I went to a Knicks game and a Nets game where the Nets were the home team, but there was a lot of Knicks fans in the stadium, and they were chanting a lot of Knicks chants, even though the home field was the Nets. So because of where the games are and how close they are to each other. That's the reason why he was getting boos from what felt like his home crowd, but it probably wasn't even his home crowd. Once again, in more news, the Pelicans beat the Utah Jazz behind CJ's 33 points. The final score was 153 to 124, a much higher scoring game. Zion ended with 17 and 11. Brandon Ingram ended with 18. Herbert Jones also ended up on the scoreboard too, being high up with 22 points. The Pelicans right now hold the 5th seed in the West, which is crazy considering their team is a little bit injury prone, and the fact that they've been able to keep up with that is really impressive. CJ is also great for the playoffs. He's great playoff material, I personally think, and I'm also a big fan of Zion. They could definitely make some noise. A lot of teams in the West can make noise in the playoffs. If the playoffs begin today, however, they face against the Clippers, which shows just how close the seedings are in the Western Conference. Before, in my previous live stream, you could see that I mentioned before how the Mavericks would be going against the Clippers if the playoffs were to start today. Now that matchup has completely changed, and it's honestly very crazy how quickly those matchups change. And Utah, before, which wasn't really in a play-in spot, now holds a play-in spot, which again shows how quickly like the seedings and like the rankings they quickly change, and they go in your favor depending on if a team loses at the wrong time, which is something that everyone needs to be looking at going later into the season, assuming everyone maintains a similar record. The Pelicans are another example of a mid-tier team, however, in my opinion, because of how good the West is. I think with the right matchups, they could either make a deep playoff run, but they could also go out in a playoff series very quickly with the wrong matchups. So that's something that definitely needs to be paid attention to when looking at the Pelicans going further into the postseason. So with that, we are out of time for the second segment. So after this short break, we are going to go into the third segment where we talk about the matchups of the week. So stay tuned for that.